All right, my friends, here's a speech of the Lubavitcher Rebbe that the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave about the first of these two Torah portions that we read this week. It's about Tazria, and just like what we're learning in the morning, it's talking about the circumcision. It's talking about the circumcision. This speech that he gave was in the year 1953. So let's go. There's man, the time. There's man, the time of mitzvah's mila is their achtag is on the 8th day of from Geburt when the child is born. Like it says in the Siddur, like it says in this week's Torah portion that we're learning the Torah reading. On the 8th day, you should circumcise the flesh of his foreskin. Remove it. Un oed man is mol. And what if a child is circumcised after 8 days? Is chach the mitzvah's mila b'chalal, even though that the circumcision has been done, yes. Men mach de bracha, and you make a blessing, but it felt over, it's lacking, seemingly it's lacking their prat, the detail, from mila bismano, a circumcision in its proper time. So mulzain, to circumcise on the 8th day specifically. So in other words, the ritual of circumcision is supposed to be done on the 8th day. But what if it was delayed for every reason, or a person delayed it on purpose, or a person didn't know? I've seen people that were 56 years old, 60 years old from Russia that they made circumcision. So they certainly did do the circumcision. You make a blessing, but it's not, something is missing. It was supposed to be done on the 8th day. Undas malzain dem achtag, and circumcising on the 8th day, hatin zicha mailet has a special uniqueness. Was mila, because mila bismano in its time is docha Shabbos. It pushes off Shabbos. For instance, if a child, let's say, is born on Shabbat, so the next Shabbat comes up as you're supposed to circumcise him. It's forbidden. We talked about this in the morning class. It's forbidden to spill blood on Shabbat. It's forbidden to make a wound on Shabbat. And this is making a wound on Shabbat. It's one of the forbidden things in the Holy Temple. You're not supposed to slaughter on Shabbat. And this is something like slaughter, because you're removing blood. But you're not supposed to do it. But if it's because it's a positive commandment, so in this case, the positive commandment pushes away the negative commandment. But that's only if it's on the 8th day. If, let's say, a child is born and he's sick, or for whatever reason, it was pushed off. The circumcision was pushed off for every reason. They were in Russia. They didn't know any better or whatever. And now he wants to circumcise. They don't do it on Shabbos. Don't do it on Shabbat. It doesn't push off Shabbat. You have to wait until after Shabbos. The women learned like we learn from the pasuk of Yom HaShmini Yom HaBuso. It says on the 8th day you should circumcise the flesh of his skin, or Yom in the daytime, on the 8th day, even on Shabbat. But if it's not on the 8th day, it's tormin nit malzain Shabbat. You don't circumcise him on Shabbat, and also don't circumcise on Yom Tov, on the holiday. According to this, darf lechiora ois kuman, it should come out as oy man is malakenda. If you circumcise a child after 8 days, a few of them men hot in freer nitgekent, even if previously you weren't able to circumcise them for whatever side reason is. Let's say for this is the child was born sick, as then in that case you don't circumcise him. You can't risk his life. As hotman the mitzvah, you'd think that maybe you didn't really do the commandment. If you didn't do it on the proper day, you didn't really do the commandment, right? It's be like eating matzah not in the right time. Eat matzah on what are the on Sukkot or something. Is bismano. So therefore, you might think that you didn't do the commandment on oich the mitzvah's mila, and you might think that the commandment itself was men is Mekayim Durachim Malzain Speter that you circumcise afterwards as helped as nor as dem kid Vatzain Amahul. You might think that if you didn't do it on the right day, then all you did, you didn't really do the commandment, but you at least removed the prohibition that the child should not have a foreskin from Easter on, from now on. But as help nid, you might think that it doesn't help from the previous days. In Velcha der Kind, in which the child was not circumcised. Thus can men showing nit metakim, you can't fix it up. This is what you should think. Men ataka nit over gevan oivtem. You didn't transgress any commandment. Val men hat doch nit getrat molzain suli pikuach nefesh. Wait, let's take a case. A child is born. He's born sick. He's born weak, and the doctor said he can't. If you circumcise him, it's going to be too much of a trauma for the child, and he's not going to live. So you don't circumcise him. You wait until he gets healthy. So you didn't do a sin because you couldn't. We're not supposed to circumcise him, but nevertheless, you did it. It's missing the whole thing of doing the real commandment. The real commandment. The Rambam says the reason for this, which we do not circumcise a child, which is you don't circumcise a child which is ill or weak. Why we wait to a child until the child has no sickness whatsoever? Why? This is the language of the Rambam, Maimonides. Now you might think, who is the Maimonides? Okay, Maimonides was a man by the name of Moses the son of Maimon. And he had a unique type of genius that he not only remembered everything, there were other Jews that remembered everything, but he could put everything all together in a way that the law came out. What does it mean? There's volumes and volumes and volumes of what's called the oral Torah, Talmud. And there's a lot of conflicting opinions. And sometimes conflicting opinions are scattered in some of the strangest places. So you can have sometimes one law where there's 5 or 6 conflicting opinions. And you might think that, well, just do what you want. Because all the people that had the opinions there in the Talmud, they were all like really super holy people and tremendously devoted people and tremendously talented people. And very rare is an opinion said in the Talmud because a person forgot a law. Once in a while it says with Rebbe Yosef, whatever, is that he got older and he forgot his learning. But it's very rare that a person in the Talmud made a mistake. But there are so many conflicting opinions. How can that be? So it says, because you have to remember the Talmud is not a human book. The Talmud is the book of God's law. And these people that were discussing these laws, these were tremendously, and it's a devoted, open people that were open to God's influence. And it says that most of the people that, like in the time of the Mishnah, and most of them, they could raise the dead. All of what's called the Tanaim, they could raise the dead. They didn't do it, just to show off. I mean, that God, some people, God wants to die. So, if a person lives a certain amount of time, God has his secrets. But nevertheless, it says that they could raise the dead. So these people are tremendously holy people. Every opinion that they had, it's not relevant that they can make a mistake. They didn't make mistakes in anything in their life. If there's some made mistakes in their life, it's like written about in the Talmud, how we went the wrong way, how we this, whatever. So it says, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim. That's what it means. A book. This is not a holy book. It's not a spiritual book. It's not a spiritual book. The other religions, they have spiritual books, people that got influences, whatever, they got spiritual. The Torah is not a spiritual book. The Torah is a godly book. God is the creator of the spiritual. It comes to the spiritual also, right? That's all the Kabbalistic ideas and things like that. But these books, okay, so if there's different opinions, so all of them are really godly. How do you know which one is right? So first of all, you have to know all the opinions, and then you have to be able to sift through them and use all of the principles of learning, because God purposely made the Torah vague. Even the Ten Commandments, we talked about this so many times. Even the Ten Commandments, right? Don't kill. What does it mean, don't kill? Don't kill bacteria. That's what it says, don't kill. Don't steal. What does it mean, don't steal? Right? Don't steal first base. Really, the fact is in the Ten Commandments, the don't steal there is not talking about money. It's talking about kidnapping. There's another commandment, lo tignovu. There's another place where it says you're not supposed to kill money, to steal money. Just take a simple one, right? The first of the two commandments. I am God that took you out of Egypt. That's the first. Don't worship any other gods, right? You're not allowed to do it. Christianity is totally, even though they claim they adopted the Torah. I mean, the first two of the Ten Commandments, their whole religion is based on transgressing those two commandments, right? You're only supposed to worship the God who took the Jews out of Egypt, and that's it, right? Not his son, not his grandbuddy, his bubby or his Zadie or his whatever. You're not supposed to, his uncle. You're not a spirit. You're not supposed to, a ghost, but nothing except for God who took the Jews out of Egypt. Who's that God? It says in the fourth commandment, he created the world. So only the God that creates the world. You got 2.5 billion people that base themselves on the Torah, and they could totally misinterpret. But I mean, listen, it's not their fault. God gave the Torah in a way that it is given to interpretation. How are we supposed to know who is the proper interpretation? How are we supposed to know? Says that's what the Maimonides came to do. Maimonides and other people like him. They came to tell us exactly what the meaning. Okay, so the Rambam, the Maimonides, says that the reason for this, which you should not circumcise a child unless that child is totally healthy, has no sickness, is because sekanas nefesh is dochas haShabbos. Because if a soul, how do you say, to endangering a person's life pushes away everything. Even. And it is possible to circumcise a child after a while, but it is impossible to return one soul. The Ifshan is possible to return one soul of the Jewish people forever. Okay, translates in Yiddish. From Arif for the long language of the Maimonides. So it says it's possible it's possible to circumcise them afterwards, and you can't return one Jewish life, so etc. So it's understood as to given at Tzveitatam. He's giving a second reason. I think one reason is because of Pikuach Nefesh Dochas Hakol. It says that endangering a person's life, endangering a life, this pushes away everything. This means as Oiba Filu is nitakain shum. If there's no other alternative to Makayim Zayin, the mitzvah speter as verta alts nidche to lead Pikuach Nefesh. Even if it's going to be impossible to circumcise the child afterwards, but if the child is sick now, so you say, hey, let's take a chance and let's circumcise him. No, at least it's going to be said, no, you can't do it. You don't do it. Right? You don't circumcise it. Or nachatam, and that's number one reason. You can't risk someone's life to do a commandment. Number one. Number two, nachatam, another reason is, well, because of filu lamol efshar, you can circumcise him afterwards. As the mitzvah that the circumcision can be gornit nidchevaim mikan mol zayin speter. So we have two reasons. Even if you can't circumcise him later, as that's you don't risk his life. And number two is, it could be if you could circumcise later, then for sure you should circumcise later, right? It's two reasons. And therefore, verstanden, we can understand as the mitzvah, the commandment from circumcision, was men is makayim, that we do after a while, helped oich the friya de katag. If so, the Rambam says what? You can circumcise him later. This seems to imply as that if you circumcise a child, if it's possible to circumcise a child afterwards, that helps for all the previous days. Bizas is vert oich. It will be done the Mila will be accomplished the same quality of the Mila of circumcision in the proper time. From men vet zogan, if you just say that Mila not in the proper time fixes up only from that circumcision until onwards, as vetach nit zayin genu, it wouldn't be enough. The reason that you can circumcise them later. Val efshar as men vet im mol zayin speter, that you can circumcise them later. Vetach noch als, after all, it'll only help the days after the circumcision, but all those days when you didn't do it, it won't help. Und as vet ein ganzen felt the mitzvah, you'll be missing the commandment of circumcision in its proper time. Okay, in other words, let's go like this. Circumcision in Judaism is very important. It is what's called the covenant, the connection between the Jewish people and God. Covenant, a connection, eternal connection between the Jews and God. That's the circumcision. Eternal connection. That was given to Abraham. We talked about that in the morning. That was given to Abraham. It's eternal. Why God decided to do that? Okay, there's books that are written, but essentially that's just what God decided. Right? There are reasons that are given, but the reason we do it is not because of any of those reasons. We do it because that's what God decided. Right? Most of the people, 99% of the Jews that do the commandments, that do this commandment of circumcision, have no idea whatsoever why they're doing it. It's just that it's done. And usually that's one of the last commandments that Jews stop doing. Like in communist Russia or places like that, they would do anything to circumcise their children until it just got too dangerous. And the education, they educated everyone to wipe out any thought of Judaism. So about 70 years went by that Jews weren't educated. But as soon as Jews found out that they were Jews and that they could, amazingly, it doesn't make any sense, even non-religious Jews, they said, oh, I want to get circumcised. Right? Okay, so you might think that a person, when he circumcises himself after 8 days, so good, he has accomplished one thing that he is not, how do you say, an orel. He hasn't got a foreskin. And removing the foreskin is a good thing. So just to remove it, that's also the person, because having a foreskin, a Jew having a foreskin is not good. It says it's not a good thing. It's a sign that you're not a Jew. You are a Jew. Of course, you are a Jew. That's why the commandment is to remove it. It's only commanded to Jews. So people that have a foreskin, I mean, obviously they're Jews because they're commanded to remove it. But nevertheless, it is not a good thing to have a foreskin. So you might think that if I circumcise my child after 8 days or longer, or like these people from Russia that are already 50, 60, 70 years old, circumcise themselves, so they haven't really done the commandment in its proper time. They haven't done the commandment in its time. They got rid of the bad part. The Maimonides indicates that it's not so. Maimonides says that if a child is in danger, for instance, and therefore don't circumcise him, and not only that, it's possible you can circumcise him afterwards. So why does he say that? Obviously, if the child is sick, so so it says you don't circumcise him, that's enough. You'll circumcise him afterwards. That he says, the Rambam says it, Maimonides says it as a law, you can circumcise him afterwards. This seems to indicate that you can do the commandment in its completion afterwards, without risking his life, even though it's in the wrong time. In other words, what does that mean? That you fix up all of the previous days. A person is 70 years old, he circumcises himself, that fixes up all of the previous 70 years, right? Up to when he was 8 days old. He wasn't obligated until then. We have to understand, how can a person do something which you do afterwards have an effect on time that's gone by, on a previous time? Either men getan, before you did it. Das was men gefind in Torah, that which we found in Torah gewisse pula, certain things was virken oif free, which affect previously, is this norm in a zolcha fallen. It's only in such cases when the pu'ula, when what we do, darfen nit oiftan kain nine, when you don't do anything new. Zay darf blois mavor, you only have to just clarify on feststellen and certify friedeka a earlier status. Rebbe will give us a chance. What happened? Yeah. 1 minute. 1 minute. What happened over here? Other Matzab or something, a Zustand, wie sie the Friede der Kapula so Matzab seinen Chila ausgestellt in a so offen, als sie seinen abgehängt und verbundet mit gewisse Tanaim. Or let's say you did something, but you made certain conditions from a Speter de Kazman. Take an example. A man marries a woman, and he marries a woman. He says, I marry you on the condition that you don't have any debts. You don't have any debts. And he marries her, go through the whole thing, and someone comes along and says, she's got debts. She owes $1 million somewhere. And so you check it out. You check it out. It takes a long while to check it out. Meanwhile, she's in limbo. She can't get married to anybody else, so she's not really married to him yet. And they discover, no, she doesn't have any debts. The person who made that up is a lie, or they made a mistake. No. So what do you mean? So you did something after the act, and it has an effect on what's previously, but it doesn't really have an effect on what's previous. You just clarified that what you did previously was right. Is vibald as the shpeta de kapula, because the later thing, it only just is just to make sure and clarify the friedika, like the thing previous is verstandig, so it's understood as they can and haben a virkum, therefore it have an effect also on previously, because you're not really doing something new, you're just clarifying that what you did was proper. Which is not the case, Pa'ula was darf oiftan anaya zach, which is not the case if you have to do something new, as ken and doch, the totza'o from at the Pa'ula, from the thing, can not have an effect on what was previous. Either the Pa'ula before the what you're doing has been done. In other words, let's say, for instance, I did not put on tefillin, right? A person that was not religious until he was 20 years old, and then he puts on tefillin for the first time. So that fixes up all the other days that come before, but it doesn't become after. I'm sorry, it fixes up all the days that come after, but it can't fix up the days that come before. You didn't do it, huh? But in circumcision, somehow or other, that does. The mesovev can doch nit kennen from dein siba. The result can't come from the cause. You cannot. What you do today can't fix up what was in the past. Hind, we can, if so, how can the circumcision have an effect on the past? Huh? Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of a hint what it is, and the Rebbe is going to say circumcision is totally different than anything else above time, but we'll see. Also, davon verstehen, we have to understand was zum Sof from the zweiten time for the second reason. Why does the Rambam say you can circumcise him in another time? As he gives another thing, and he says, and it is impossible to return one Jewish person forever. First of all, what does he have? Three things. He says, a child that's sick, you don't circumcise him on Shabbat. Why? Because you don't circumcise him on the 8th day. Oh, the 8th day. Why? Because sakana, a danger, pushes away a commandment. Reason number one. Number two, and you can do it later. Number three, it's impossible to return one Jewish soul forever. If the child dies, you can't bring him back. The etlecha verta, these few words, you can never bring a Jewish person back. Haben doch lechiora mer sheiches zum erste tam, for the first reason, from danger than the second reason. Right? What we say the first reason is danger in life pushes away Shabbat. It pushes away this commandment. This endangering a life, you can't do it. It pushes away a commandment. And then the Rambam should say, and you can't return a Jewish person forever. The commandment's only for Jews. Okay, that's what it should be. But no, the Rambam puts it last. What does the Rambam say? He says, danger pushes off the commandment. And number one. Number two, you can do it later. Number two. Number three, and you can never return a Jewish soul forever. This thing about not returning a Jewish soul, that's relevant to the first thing. The danger pushes away a commandment. Because Vibal does durch dem Molzheim by means of circumcising him later, Vert als Nistaken afilu der inyan from Mila Bismano. And you sacrifice him later, you can fix up the commandment, like we finished saying later on. Is Darfman doch shoin nit ankommen. So then you have to come to this third reason, is it's impossible to return a Jewish soul back ever. Huh? So therefore, what do we say? A person, a child is sick, so you don't circumcise him on the 8th day. Why? Because danger pushes away the commandments, and you can never return a danger. You can never return, if a child dies, you can never return him back. Right? That's the way it should be. That's the way the order should be. And then finally, and you can do it later. You can fix it up later. No, the Rambam doesn't put it in that order. So the Rebbe is going to learn a very interesting thing. Why? About the Jewish people, about this commandment, about this. Okay, let's just 1 second. It says in the book Likuti Torah, that's what we learned this morning, that through the circumcision, this commandment of circumcision, there is drawn down such a godly light. Was avoda from a yidden, which any sort of human service. One minute. From a yidden can im nit mamshich sein, cannot reach. Because the service of creations can nit der langen, cannot reach so high. It was all the commandments come from the essence of God. The commandments, these are commandments of God to the Jewish people to make this physical world a holy place. That's why the Jews are here, to make this world infinitely higher than all of the highest of highest worlds going to heaven and all the things like peanuts compared to the revelation of godliness we make in this world when we do the commandments, because the whole world is just from God's speech, even the upper worlds. And God's commandments, that's God's thought. And so when we do the commandments, they're all high, but the commandment of circumcision is higher than all of the other. It's so high, but the light of Shabbat, of the circumcision. In other words, when we do the commandment of circumcision, this evokes a certain pleasure from the creator of the universe. Well, that doesn't really make any sense, but we talked about it before. God doesn't make any sense. God is totally above sense. But the fact is that here we are. We created the world, and with all these amazing laws of nature, and there's also laws which are above nature, and that's the Torah. So just like the laws of nature, you can manipulate nature, so to speak. So the laws of the Torah, you can, so to speak, manipulate God, not because we really can, but because that's what God decided. And so when we do the commandment of circumcision, this God gives God a tremendously deep pleasure, a connection, or the light which is drawn down by the circumcision. This is drawn by itself from above, any sort of arousal from above, nor calls them on, but all the time that is orla, a foreskin or something covering over, so it can't be drawn down. Undurach them, by means of this, which we take away the foreskin, so it comes, this light of godliness comes on its own, because we can't evoke it. We can evoke that aspect like in every commandment, but the additional blessing which comes from it, that's from God himself. Circumcision. Azoivi does like it is by drawing down light which is from above. Azoi is as oich. It's also regarding the Kinesis Nefesh Kedusha, the entering of a holy Jewish soul which comes through the circumcision. Thus is a bechina. This is a level of the soul which is higher than any sort of logic or reason. Was the madrig, which this level can knit. It cannot be accomplished doing by doing anything in this world. All you can do is remove. Nor ze is faran by yeder yidden be'etzem. It's there present by every Jew essentially as mernit was ze verdnisgal is revealed by means of the circumcision. And therefore, mila, the circumcision, it has an effect oich the zaman and the past. Why? Zoivi all pu'ulas, like everything which you do, have to not be done, even though I'm saying, just like everything you do, nit oivketan kain naya inyan, just like everything you do cannot, like we said, like the example we have about verifying if a woman really had money or if a woman was married. Let's take another example. You get married to a lady and you find out somebody says she's already married to somebody else, right? She's already married to someone else. And wow, that's terrible. So you go and you look around and find it's a lie. She was never married to anybody else. So that has an effect on the past, but you haven't really done anything new. You just removed the doubt. It just removes something. So the circumcision is the same type of a thing. It reveals the essential connection of a Jew to God. But it wasn't, so to speak, it wasn't revealed before. But dugma, something like tshuva me'ava, something like if a person repents to God from love, this helps also in the past. It says that if a Jew did sins and he comes to love God and he repents from what he did, so that loving God in the past, it fixes up the past. Why does it fix up the past? Because a person says to himself, listen, why did I do sins in the past? Why did I do bad things, terrible things? Because I didn't know what God is. I didn't know how much God loves me. I didn't know how good God is. If I would have known that, I would have never done it. And the fact is, I would do it again. I really enjoyed doing those things, those sins. I really enjoyed it. I do it in a second. What's the problem? But now that I realize how good God is, I realize it was stupid to go after those things. Huh? Stupid. Why would I go after? It's like a little child, plays in his feces, right? Not a nice thing to talk about, but I'll talk about it anyway. Little child plays in his feces, so he really enjoys it. It's all warm and it's a color and he's getting something done. And it's all, the smell, all of his senses are aroused by this disgusting thing. But he likes it. And he can't figure out why his parents are going, what are you doing? And they're washing him up. He can't wait to do it again. But as soon as he realizes what a nasty, terrible thing and how good it is to be clean and to smell good and then how to be healthy, etc. Then he stops to do it. Doesn't he want to do it? In fact, it even disgusts him to do it. Like it's still until his children do it, then it'll, right? So it's the same exact type of a thing over here. A person does sins because he thinks that it's really fun, and it is fun. But as soon as he realizes who he really is, his true identity, then he realizes that no, to be clean and to be healthy and to be that's a good thing. This is not good. So he says, and the sins push you because you think, but wow, I really enjoyed doing that sin. It's a sign that I cannot trust myself. It's a sign that I have to really throw myself on my creator and try to feel the goodness of my creator. And that's what's called returning to God from love. So that fixes up even the past because you become like a different person because really the connection you had to God was always there, but you didn't realize it, right? You were blind to it, insensitive. Val de tshuva, because returning back to God has to not oiftan kain nayazach. You might think that returning to God doesn't make anything new. It just fixes up in the future. Well, I'll never do that again. But the fact of the matter is that the love that it brought, that the sin brought you to this level of love, a new connection to God, because I feel b'shas hachet is doch the bechinas neshama geven the emuna yito yisbrech. But now with the soul, because the soul was always united with God, nor does is geven behelim. It was just concealed, and that's why he did the sins. And when a person returns back to God, tshuva means to return back to God. This reveals the connection that was already there. So it's something like the man getting married to the woman, and there's a doubt. Maybe she's married to somebody else. And what is a month later, he says, no, it's not so. She's not married to anybody else. It was a mistake. So now she's married to me. The same thing with the soul. But I did the sins, so it's like a mistake. Suddenly I realized, wow, it was just a mistake. It was a mistaken identity. Oiv men is oiv speter. If a person later on is circumcised, is farbleibt as dach behelam, it still remains. If a person is later on not circumcised, so there remains this connection to God in concealment. It's hidden. When the kavana, the bria, the attention of the creation is the attention, the whole reason that the soul came down into the world is in order that the Jewish people should reveal who they really are, and through their service, their obligation to God, and through their service of God, that they could reveal the soul in a revealed way. What are we revealing? We're revealing the God of Israel is the God that's creating everybody. So there's only one God. He's creating me and he's creating everybody, but the only ones that can really reveal it in the world are the Jews. And the Jews can only reveal it by being circumcised. There's also circumcision of the heart, but that's different. Here we're talking about as b'shas men is yamo, when a person is circumcised, un men is megalazan, and we reveal this level of the essence connection with the God. This helps also later on. And we'll continue this, God willing, tomorrow. And now I'll tell a story. And I'll put also up the Torah explanation from last year. Last year, it was only one Torah portion. The whole week, we only read Tazria. So you have to sort of interpolate that a little bit, because sometimes it says that the only portion we read this week is Tazria. So don't think that it's referring to this year. This was referring to last year, but the topic is this week's Torah portion. Okay, here we go.